and we will now hear from the Russian Federation.
Mr. Minister, we are pleased to see you presiding over the Security Council. We wish to thank Madam Gase and Madam Maria Pia Devota for their briefings. The illicit flow of small arms and light weapons spawns a multitude of threats and challenges. This is particularly acutely felt in developing states which often are flooded with these types of weapons. The uncontrolled use of these weapons results in the fact that they fall into the hands of organized criminal networks, illegal armed groups, extremists, and terrorists. Those who suffer most are ordinary civilians. The struggle against illicit flows of SALW needs to remain at the focus of the attention of all states. Consequently, these efforts should be carried out first and foremost at the General Assembly of the United Nations, where every country has the right to a vote and an opportunity to participate in the adoption of the relevant decisions. We welcome the recent successful conclusion of the 7th biannual meeting of member states on implementation of the landmark United Nations Program of Action. We applaud the efforts of the Kenyan chairmanship during this meeting. The outcome of the far-reaching discussion at the General Assembly is a far-ranging list of recommendations, implementation of which will result in meaningful progress in practical efforts to combat illicit flows of SALW. We call upon all member states to comply with and implement the outcome document at the national, regional, and global levels. Mr. President, the United Nations Security Council is also seized of the issue of illicit flows of SALW. In 2015, the Security Council adopted a thematic resolution, 2220. This resolution sets out in detail the Council's views on combating this scourge. Further, we note the statement of the President of the Security Council on the specific aspects of combating the illicit flow of SALW. At the same time, the Security Council clearly should not duplicate the functions of the General Assembly, especially on such a universal issue as countering the illicit flow of SALW. The main role of the Security Council is to facilitate conflict resolution in specific countries and regions by tapping into an array of measures that are applicable to a given situation, each of which is designed to help meet a specific objective. In this context, it is important to recall the following. Illicit flow of SALW is a global problem which has an adverse impact inter alia on the implementation of the relevant measures through the United Nations Security Council. The imposition of any restrictions against a given state, reinforcement of any given peacekeeping mission will not result in addressing this. The only way we can tackle this challenge is by pooling our efforts. The Security Council duly shoulders its responsibility in these matters. However, at the same time, contriving to draw in issues that are to the Security Council which are within the purview of the General Assembly would be misguided. Mr. President, the main reasons behind the uncontrolled flow of SALW throughout the world are well known. Illicit flow of such weapons are a direct consequence of excessively permissive national legislation or persistent loopholes in national export control regimes. And this results in the suffering of neighboring countries in particular. Nor do we see sufficiently responsible conduct by the multitude of arms brokers organizations active on the arms market, nor do states consistently act responsibility that have amassed excessive stockpiles of SALW. Instead of their disposal, they often attempt to sell these surpluses, and they also pay far too little attention to the problem of illicit cross-border flows of these weapons. There is a major threat emanating from the production of SALW under expired licenses or without licenses of countries with the relevant technologies. Clearly, the deliveries of weapons manufactured in such a manner are concealed. Stakeholders take great pains to conceal them, which means that the end users are often parts of criminal networks. The main problem is that in pursuit of profit or for the advancement of political short-sighted agendas, the suppliers fail to consider whose hands those SALW which are exported fall into and what purposes they are then used for. The Russian Federation possesses a highly extensive national legislation to combat the illicit flow of SALW. We stand ready to share our experience, the array of tried and tested best practices, as well with interested states. We call upon member states through implementation of the UN Program of Action to combat illicit flows of SALW and in accounting for the recommendations of the 7th Conference of Member States on this process at the General Assembly, to prioritize implementation at the national level of the following measures. To introduce a blanket prohibition on the transfer of all types of SALW to subjects not authorized by the governments of recipient states. To ensure stringent regulation and direct control by states where territory under their jurisdiction sees arms-related broker activity taking place, and to do everything possible to limit the number of these brokers to the greatest possible extent. To prohibit the re-export or subsequent transfer of imported SALW without the written consent of the initial exporter state. And to prevent the production of SALW with expired licenses or without licenses of the state with relevant technology. This includes ending the practice of when weapons produced previously with licenses and manufactured previously with licenses are slightly modernized without the consent of the manufacturers and then exported as their own product. Mr. President, to conclude, I wish to once again emphasize that the fight against illicit flows of SALWs, ensuring secure storage of stockpiles and disposal of surpluses, it constitutes the prerogative of states themselves, an integral part of their sovereignty. For this very reason, the concerted efforts of all states at the General Assembly and subsequent implementation of the measures under the UN Program of Action, first and foremost at the national level, is of paramount importance here. This is the only way we will manage to achieve the shared goal and practical successes in countering illicit flows of SALW throughout the world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.